I had a medical abortion, and in fact, following my first abortion, I had a contraceptive implant put in. Except there was a hiccup. When you get your implant, you have to wait a week before it's really in place, and there's no more problem. My quality of life declined significantly then. I found myself in this situation because I had severe anxiety issues, which meant I could no longer attend classes. I would go into the high school, I would get 42-degree fevers on the verge of fainting, a really violent school phobia. I dropped out of school, and as my mother had warned, I had to leave her house. So I went to live with my ex. And so the conditions were really, really not good at all levels. I was in a huge mess. An unsanitary apartment, so no toilets, no hot water. Since we had no money, well, no food, you know? Like, we had so many mice that it was impossible to keep anything dry. Some kind of pasta, because they were reproducing everywhere. Already, physically, I maybe weigh 58 kilos for 1.70 meters. I wasn't in better shape. It was an extreme situation, in fact, especially since I was 18 years old. In fact, what I mean is that it was perfect as a condition, I think, to be in denial. I didn't have time to think about anything else. Because, in fact, the principle of pregnancy denial is that you are in denial. The concept of pregnancy does not exist in your mind. For example, if you no longer have your periods, you might say, oh, well, it's maybe because I have deficiencies, or, oh, I have milk losses, it's maybe a hormonal imbalance. Never will the fact of being pregnant come to your mind. Pregnancy denial is powerful, and it happens to people who really don't want children or after a trauma. Pregnancy denial in general, it's not like that. It's really if there's something deep behind that psychologically you know you won't be able to handle. You erase this idea absolutely from your mind. So I continued to live my life. I started wearing tank tops and such in early March and April. And actually I had water coming out of my nipples, which I thought was water. What I discovered later was that it was not the case at all. And actually, since I had no money, I didn't go to the doctor. I delayed returning to my mother's, as I was physically and psychologically unable to handle being there any longer. Since I had an implant, we thought it might be a hormone problem, which is possible given the significant thyroid issues in my family. So we went to see an endocrinologist. He said, yeah, you should go see a gynecologist because you probably have ovarian cancer. And then I thought, okay, very well. A week later, I visit the gynecologist and request an ultrasound. She assures me it's definitely not ovarian cancer. Despite the symptoms, I insisted on getting an ultrasound just to be sure, even though the doctor thought it was unnecessary. At least we're sure and we move on to something else if it's not that. She ran a device over my stomach, then told me to put my t-shirt back on, sit down, and that I needed to sit down. I can't explain it well, but in my mind, when I say denial of pregnancy, I mean I don't like being pregnant. I imagined that I could have a lease in my stomach, yet losing air, I still had quite a few symptoms. And she told me, actually, you are 5.5 months pregnant. And the first thing that came to my mind was I'm going to kill myself because in my head I had to give birth. I've never wanted to have a child, never. I know I won't have a child and I didn't want one. So it was either I gave up the kid a bit dearly or I took responsibility for it, which was not possible. I was going to be homeless from August due to unemployment, but I thought to myself, it's okay. I have struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts for a long time due to early life traumas. Suicide runs in my family. There is only depression, there is only alcohol, whether it's maternal or paternal. I've been struggling with depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts for nearly 13 years. This has been the worst year of my life, despite having little baggage. It's truly unbeatable. I still asked her the question. I told her, isn't there a way you could make me have an abortion alone or anything like that? She said no, and she told me. However, in Spain there is a clinic. I usually send women who have a prescribed abortion to do it there in that clinic. They are safe, they speak French, etc. Contact the provided number to schedule an abortion appointment before Tuesday, as advised by the person you spoke with on Thursday or Friday. Delaying further may make the procedure unavailable. It's 6 months for the limit, and it's 6 months worldwide. So she also tells me it's super expensive. It's 2,200. So you can still call the family planning in Marseille. They have help for this kind of case. So there you have it. She didn't leave me alone in mode. Go ahead, fend for yourself. She was very understanding because I learned later that this gynecologist was performing late-term abortions clandestinely. I go home, I have to find out more, and the moment I dreaded the most is that I have to talk to my mother. She wasn't very understanding because my mother never had an abortion or anything like that. As soon as she had the 3 children, she wanted them, she had that luck, she was in mode, what do you want to do? I want to have an abortion. She said, why don't you want to give birth under 10? I gave birth under 10, why? We come back to what I was saying earlier, that is to say that already I don't want to give birth, I don't want to see the face, I don't want to be pregnant for 3 more months because I don't know where I'll be then, and it's not worth giving birth under these circumstances. She told me she would accompany me for the next 24 hours. My stomach swelled up, but not like a 6-month pregnancy. It was noticeably more swollen, which is how pregnancy denial can go unnoticed. It's that actually it's not in a fetal position, it's a bit straight. Actually, it's like as I was still half in denial, I didn't experience it severely, but in hindsight, it's simply being pregnant, that problem, that it was never about having an abortion, but rather everything surrounding it, which I find terrifying, including being pregnant. I had the ultrasound on Thursday, Tuesday at 9 o'clock. I was in Barcelona at a clinic. I mean, no time to think, no time to, I was in action. Well, actually, I didn't have time to be in mode. You suspect and question if you're making the right choice. However, you have to go as you don't have time since you're waiting in the waiting room. These are costly private clinics. I was called in to see the gynecologist who did another oprography on me, which was my second one. It was a lot, because actually I wasn't at 5.5 months. I was really at the very last of the last day to abort. And she told me it's not that we don't want to, it's that actually you risk a hemorrhage. I told her if she doesn't let me get an abortion, I'll throw myself under a car. In fact, I wasn't there to blackmail her, but it was a moment when I couldn't bear not to abort. I don't feel like being responsible for someone else. Already I am responsible for myself. It's a bit of a struggle. And the gynecologist comes to see me and says, you can go into the operating room, you're in excellent physical health. There I knew what was going to happen. That is, there were the onset of contractions. So I knew I was going to be in pain. He stuck needles in my vagina, but like a needle, something that's not pleasant. And I never understood why. Well, I never understood if. I later understood why, but at the time I didn't because no one explained it to me, and I understand why no one did. Because there, I learned it later, it's that in fact you trigger a heart attack in the child. And I thought to myself, fortunately they didn't tell me. Because I think I wouldn't have had a doubt, but I would have been in okay mode. Okay, it's complicated, right? So they take me back to the small room and they tell me, well, here, this is the little pill to trigger contractions. And I thought to myself, okay, cool, how long did it last? 4 hours. They gave me, I think it was morphine, some shit like that. Really, it was horrible because actually the morphine, it put me to sleep. And as soon as I woke up, it was 3 times stronger. Maybe they gave me 5 or 6 doses, I couldn't stand it so much. I was sweating, shaking, and feeling horrible. And so I fall asleep and they always wake me up in the operating room. And then I look at the nurse and she tells me, it's over, it's okay. And then I burst into tears of joy. Really, I was just happy, but deeply happy. She walks me to the exit where my mother is waiting. My mother tells me, do you realize you just killed someone? So there, I'm coming out of 9 hours of surgery and you're telling me this. Actually, I don't understand the arguments of people who are anti-abortion, especially in my case, because I thought it was either him or the 2 of us. He lacks life experience, regrets, sadness, and anger, and I'm sorry for those who are shocked by it. But it was truly the best decision to make. I have no doubt about that. And despite everything people have said to me, like, do you realize it's a 6-month-old baby, the poor thing, he was just aborted. I experienced pregnancy denial, a trip to Barcelona, pains, and a vaginal injection. Should we compile a list? The poor thing of what? I think you're not feeling sorry for the right person. Afterwards, I understand that there are women who regret, who say to themselves that they prefer not to abort, to keep it, etc. I understand, but if the relevant parties are saying it, then it's acceptable. If you're uninvolved, you can just not talk about it. After returning from Spain, I resumed working on it. Then I went to Lille. I didn't talk about it specifically, I talked to my friends, close ones, etc. And I still made a thread on Twitter. And I didn't think it would get so big. I thought I was going to get a lot of flack, for sure, and not at all. I began to have a few men who insulted me. Most of those who insulted me were men, let's be honest. The montages of my head with written, I love to kill children, well, you don't have to. There was some really hardcore stuff, but it was very, very, very minimal. Because I was mainly relayed by women, for me, it's essential that people know there are solutions. In all areas, you have the information, whether you want it or not. Afterwards, you can do what you want with it. In frankness already, it's not crazy for abortion. We included it, albeit reluctantly, as 3 months is simply not enough time. Already, to realize the first symptoms is complicated. 6 months, I understand that it smells a lot, but with all that is pregnancy denial, etc., how do you do each time you deny a pregnancy? Well, it doesn't happen 600 times in a lifetime either. But, you have to go spend a minimum wage on abortion, a minimum wage that is, I'm lucky. I had them, and then I shared them with my ex. A 16-year-old girl with low-income parents faces limited options due to financial constraints. She will face guilt regardless of her decision to abort or keep the baby, no matter her age, 16, 25, or 50. That's why I want to demonstrate that solutions exist, and I hope for many more, starting right here in France.